shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
we will use it to deliver change, to restore service and respect to politics, tread more lightly on your lives, and unite our country.
and now we've got this.
My starting point on this is to remind everyone that over 80,000 people lose their lives every year because of smoking.
Is Starmer an authoritarian on a power trip? This woman speaks for the nation.
Why are you taking all my privileges away and spoiling my life, my enjoyment? Because that's all I've got. It's my cigarettes.
Well, in Glynis, also...
When I became Chancellor of the Exchequer, I inherited a £22 billion black hole.
Well, it turns out that that black hole was largely caused by our illegal immigration overspending. Will your taxes now go up to fund illegal immigrants? Plus...
average weight in this country is now overweight.
Obesity is expected to cost the NHS £50 billion a year by 2050.
The more you eat, the greedier you get.
The fire brigade is dealing with one obese person every 4 hours. Should they refuse non-emergency calls? And...
the bulk of the bullying and abuse that I was experiencing, it's not catty, it's cruel.
Meghan Markle is using the royal title to make money from jewellery and fashion lines, apparently. Should she be stopped? On my panel tonight is GB News star Nana Acquia, Tory peer Lord Bailey, and ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Oh, and which footballer has been caught belting it out at karaoke?
Because this world is you, baby, and I know you will.
Get ready, Britain, here we go. Is your tax bill going up to pay for illegal immigrants? Next.
Good evening from the GB Newsroom. It's just gone 9 o'clock. Your top story this hour. The Prime Minister has confirmed a ban on outdoor smoking is being considered because of the huge burden smoking puts on the NHS and the taxpayer. According to what the Sun newspaper says are secret Whitehall papers, ministers are considering making it illegal to light up in outdoor restaurants, playgrounds and outside nightclubs and stadiums. Hospitality bosses say new restrictions would cost jobs, but Sir Keir Starmer insists action is needed.
My starting point on this is to remind everyone that over 80,000 people lose their lives every year because of smoking. That's a preventable death. It's a huge burden on the NHS, and of course it's a burden on the taxpayer. So yes, we are going to take decisions in this space. More details will be revealed, but this is a preventable series of deaths, and we've got to take the action to reduce the burden on the NHS and reduce the burden on the taxpayer.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has said he discussed resetting relations during a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris today. Sir Keir Starmer's talks with French leaders focused on a new treaty expected to take 6 months to finalise. Illegal migration was also on the agenda as leaders aim to enhance intelligence sharing to tackle smuggling gangs. It follows news that over 20,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel into the UK this year, with hundreds arriving just yesterday. In other news, a man has been charged after a top chef who worked with Gordon Ramsay was left fighting for his life at Notting Hill Carnival. Police found Muzi Mnetu unconscious on the street in Queensway before paramedics arrived. Police have now confirmed 31-year-old Omar Wilson will appear in court tomorrow in relation to the attack. He was charged with causing grievous bodily harm. A teenager has been found guilty of stabbing a 15-year-old girl to death in the street. Holly Newton suffered 36 knife injuries after an attack in Hexham in Northumberland. That's in January of last year. The court previously heard Holly had told a friend just hours before being stabbed that the youth was basically stalking her. A 17-year-old boy who cannot be named admitted a charge of manslaughter but denied murder, claiming his mind went blank that day and he had only intended to take his own life. And train driver strikes at London North Eastern Railway have been called off following last-ditch talks between union and company officials. More than 20 days of strikes were planned on weekends in the next few months after the union claimed there had been a breakdown in industrial relations. But ASLEF said strike action is now suspended and drivers will report for duty as normal. The development follows meetings between the union and the company. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. It looks like your tax bill will go up so we can pay for illegal immigrants and asylum seekers. Labour keep telling us about this financial black hole. Now, it turns out that a large chunk of that is the bill for illegal immigrants, and that problem is set to get worse, not better. The Home Office has been massively overspending when it comes to illegal immigration. Over the last 3 years, the Home Office estimated it would cost the taxpayer £320 million to handle asylum, border control, visas and passport operations. It costs £7.9 billion. That's an overspend of £7.6 billion quid. Whoopsie. The initial estimates of this year's cost are roughly £6.4 billion, but just look at the numbers coming across the channel now and the total lack of a plan to deal with them. We've had 7,000 arrivals since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, more than 20,000 this year. The queue in Calais is getting bigger, not smaller. There's no deterrent anymore, so every single person who arrives will be able to claim asylum, then appeal again. We're going to have to build new sites to accommodate these people. The actual cost of this is going to be eye-watering. So when Sir Keir Starmer says this...
I will be honest with you. There is a budget coming in October, and it's going to be painful. We have no other choice, given the situation that we're in. Those with the broadest shoulders should bear the heavier burden. To accept short-term pain for long-term good. The difficult trade-off for the genuine solution.
And then Rachel Reeves says stuff like this.
We were left a £22 billion black hole for this year in the public finances. Those are numbers, and that was spending covered up by the previous Conservative government.
What they're not telling you is that a large chunk of that black hole is to pay for illegal immigrants. Another large chunk of that is the £3.1 billion Labour borrowed to pay the unions, by the way. But when this miserable budget lands and there are tax rises, there's no winter fuel payments for some pensioners, capital gains tax will probably go up, so you don't get much of a return on your investments. Inheritance tax will probably go up, won't it? So the money that your loved ones or you have worked all your lives for to pass down to the next generation is just ripped away from you, just so we can give it to people who have come to Britain illegally. Sir Keir Starmer, he can go around Europe and shake the hands of as many European leaders as he wants. Maybe he should press the flesh of a few British people and see how they feel about that. Let's get our thoughts on my panel tonight. We've got GB News superstar, it's Nana Acquia. We've got Conservative peer Lord Bailey and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Nana, I will start with you on this. Do we have to be a bit honest here? Or do they have to be a bit honest now and start telling us, well, it's one thing that your tax bill's going to go up, inheritance tax, capital gains, whatever happens, happens. But actually, quite a lot of that is going to go to our asylum system.
Well, I mean, first of all, they came in and said, oh, no, we're not going to have the Bibi Stockholm. We're going to kick everybody out of the hotels. We're going to not use the army bases. There literally is nowhere to put these people. I think they need to start answering questions, because as far as I've seen, the Labour government have not answered questions. They're not answering if they're asked what they're going to do about it. In fact, in the big speech that he gave the other day, he didn't mention immigration, which is the big topic right now. It is clear that it is going to cost this country an absolute out-and-out fortune. There is, as you said, no deterrent, and also the fact that they are simply, they've got rid of Rwanda, so they're just going to repeat the mistakes of the last government. I don't see anything positive coming out from the Labour
Keir Starmer
Party.
was pleading on us to, abide by the social contract. Look, if you've got the broadest shoulders, then, you can pay a bit more now. Look, honestly, you just pay a bit more now, and it's for the greater good. Well, actually, hang on a minute. If 6-point-something billion, dare I say even nudging 8 billion quid of that, is to go for people who've literally just arrived here illegally across the channel or by other means in the back of a lorry, well, I don't think the vast majority of the British public will consent to that.
But there's two things I think we should focus on. Firstly, when he said he wants to be honest, if he really was going to be honest, he'd tell us he had no plan. All through the election period, he was accused of that. Turns out it was true. If you look at what the Chancellor was saying, that she didn't know about the hole in the budget, that's an utter lie. We have the budget of office responsibility. What were they doing? They know where every penny is. It's public finances because they're in the public. And also the biggest addition to that cost is the decision she's made since becoming Chancellor.
I.e. the union stuff.
Well, that...
And the winter fuel allowance.
And the winter fuel payment as well. And what's stunning, they've said... There was a suspicion that they weren't really saying what they planned to do. That suspicion has come true now. There's no doubt we're in a tough place, but all through the election, they didn't mention that tough place.
So, look, Matthew, I know you disagree with a lot of what's been said now. I will put it to you that, when this miserable budget arrives in October, we find out exactly what damage it's going to be. There is going to be a large chunk of people's tax revenue that is going to go to either paying your union mates or, crucially, illegal immigrants.
Well, paying your union mates, Patrick, actually means paying teachers, nurses and the people who deliver our frontline public services on which we all rely at the wage that they deserve, and that was set by an independent pay review body.
Going up to pay for illegal immigrants.
Absolutely. Look, in terms of this is an absolute disgrace. The Tories told Parliament they were going to put 300 million quid in the asylum budget, and in fact, when the IFS today has found that there was a black hole, not one that was known about. This is the independent, respected Institute of Fiscal Studies that has support across the, it's respected across the political spectrum. It found that there is this huge black hole of billions. And yes, that is going to have to be paid for because the Tories ran up that bill. James Cleverly, who was Home Secretary, who didn't apologise today, he should have been on his knees apologising for this. He said, so what we need to do is we need a system that works, that doesn't, that people are processed quickly, where people are processed quickly and people who shouldn't be in the country are sent back.
We would all agree with that. What is that system? Because we're not hearing the answers here. All you're doing is what Keir Starmer keeps doing. The Tories did this, they did that, and then he does a whole summary of what's happened. Then there's no answers to what's
there is none, because, well, the first thing to do is to actually process people, which wasn't happening under the Tories, whereas they were sitting in hotels at the expense of the taxpayer, and it's been a national disgrace.
Can I just say one thing? The Tory government couldn't stand and say, what a good job they did. They did not do a good job. They definitely could have.
We can agree on that,
Let's be clear about that. But also, what's important is that job was made infinitely harder by the Labour Party and people on the left campaigning against every single idea that the government came up with, and that pushed the bill as well. And I go back to the point that Labour have no plan.
But the Tory party did have a majority, and actually they were fighting themselves. So, you know, I agree, they did a terrible job.
Yeah, they did a terrible. I wouldn't sit here and tell they did a good job. But the worry is now, Labour have been given this responsibility and have no plan. And it isn't good enough just to say the Tories did terribly. What are you going to do for the country?
What are they going to do?
Do you mean the plan on immigration?
Well, their plan on immigration...
endless plans. We're going to discuss in the next hour rather too many plans.
How are they going to spend less than the Conservative government before them? That's what they're going to do different.
Well, Rachel Reeves has asked every department to find savings. I think there's a danger that she becomes the Iron Chancellor, but we have to sort out this migration mess. We have to start having... The key thing is to send people who aren't back who shouldn't be here, which is why Yvette Cooper's Home Secretary has put an emphasis on repatriating people when their asylum claims have failed. And we've seen some flights already, but we need to see a lot more.
Here, then. So you're going to let them come here, and then you're going to...
Because we're working internationally. That's why the new cross-border police force, that's why smashing the gangs, Patrick will laugh when I say that, but it takes time because you want fewer people arriving, and we need to work together with Europe, which is why you've seen him talking to Macron and Scholz over the last few days.
Hang on a second. Working together with Germany on this is literally working together with the people who created this mess. What Angela Merkel did to the continent of Europe is an absolute disgrace, and we can never go back from it. That woman deserves a huge amount of criticism for that. But just to talk about the social contract now, OK, between ordinary, hard-working British people and the government, right? And when you look at now the tax bills, we all know the tax bills have been astronomically high already. They're going up again. It's going to be a miserable budget, OK? And you're going to see things like inheritance tax probably go up. People who've worked all the lives for it. And a huge chunk of that money now is going to go so that people who have just arrived in Britain can live in nicer conditions. And that, I'm sorry, but I can see, I'm not encouraging anything, I can see protests about that.
Well, I'm just sick to my back teeth of it. I've had enough, but I know if I go and protest, I'll be probably called a racist, and then I may be locked up simply for being part of any sort of protest if anything bad happens whilst I'm there. Look, I genuinely think that the British people have a right to get an answer from the Labour government as to how they're going to spend the money and where that money's going to go. I'm sick and tired of all the fact that we are funding appeals. I think maybe you could appeal once, and then if you fail your asylum, we should not have to fund it. It's the whole legal system behind it as well. What are the Labour Party going to do to change that, to stop this repeated appeal? What are they going to do? We want to know, not smashing the gangs. They're already here.
I think the financial burden coming for the country needs to go wider. Now, immigration is one thing, but the Labour government has to explain how it's going to have this very high level of public service and how it's going to pay for it. They made great arguments about the high level of the tax burden, where they are absolutely going to add to that now, and they can't have it both ways. They either believe we should lower the tax burden or they believe we should have all of these services. There's a tough nut for them to crack.
They say the latest from the NHS, for example, is, and, you know, it's approaching that time of year again, isn't it, winter crisis, but they say that, right, if you give us just another £3 billion, all right, we might be able to get a handle on the waiting list. I think most people in Britain would rather give the NHS £4 or £5 billion and not give, what's it going to work out as, £8 billion for illegal immigration?
Well, I don't think anybody would disagree with you, Patrick, and that's why we need an asylum system that works, that doesn't pay people to sit in doesn't pay for people to sit in hotels for month after month, which sends people back who shouldn't be here, which sees fewer people arriving on our shores because we've taken international action to do that, processes people quickly and sends people home who shouldn't be here.
You're just doing what Keir Starmer does, listing all the things that we need, which everyone would agree with.
Well, that's what they're going to do. They've only had 7 weeks now.
They're coming out with absolutely no solutions. 7 weeks, so what? It's irrelevant. What are they going to do about it?
You need to make your mind up. 1 minute you say you've done more than the last government did in the whole of its...
I think that wasn't a wise line of his.
Or you've only had 7 weeks. The point here is, right, look, I want the Labour government to succeed because this is a pivotal time for this country. We've already seen riots in the streets where people are disgruntled about the social contract. We are very worried about the costs going forward. I want to see them succeed, but what they're going to have to do is admit that we're about to see Labour austerity or the country goes under. There isn't two.
That's because we've got to pay for the bills that you left us with.
No, you can't blame the Conservative Party.
We can when they left a massive deficit.
Yeah. All right, guys, lovely start. Well done. Coming up, Sir Keir Starmer's popularity has plummeted to a near-record low in damning new polling, and he hasn't even raised taxes yet. Can I also point out it's quite impressive considering he hasn't even got an opposition either. But is it all unravelling for the Prime Minister already? Conservative MP Greg Smith joins me live shortly, plus the great British public react to Starmer's mooted ban on smoking in pub gardens.
Why are you taking all my privileges away and spoiling my life, my enjoyment? Because that's all I've got. It's my cigarettes.
I tackled the nanny state. I would actually go as far as to say authoritarian madness at 10. But up next, a shocking new figures reveal that firefighters were called out to help move an obese person every 4 hours last year. Should the fire brigade help obese people in non-emergency situations, OK? Actress Tina Malone goes head-to-head with TV personality Lizzie Cundy. It's live and it's next. Lovely.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Did you know several Paralympic GB track and field athletes aim to go for gold this summer in Paris? So aside from pure talent, a British firm has incorporated, get this, space technology in the materials of running clothes to help athletes perform at their ultimate capacity. I'm not sure if I believe this, but we'll find out in a sec. Trailblazing scientists, engineers and designers at British firm Rion Labs have taken an idea first used in a NASA project and they've now developed it for over 15 years at Imperial College in London.
First of all, please can you explain to us a bit more about how and what this incredible technology is?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, our founder, Dr. Dan Plant, spent many years developing these kind of dynamic materials. That means they behave in what's called non-Newtonic way. So they don't follow the rules. Effectively, they can change their behavior depending on kind of stress or stretch you apply to it. So what you get on an athlete level, if you imagine you have a garment, its supercharger is such that the garment changes its support depending on your movement or your activity or the speed at which you run.
So you're saying that it generates, what, more sort of kinetic energy, is that right?
Not quite. It makes you effectively make more out of your own energy. Spot the athletes with the wavy curves and stripes, you'll see that. So that's super polymer we have in combination with these stripes that are kind of built around the way your muscles moves.
You said the difference between first and fourth place is a fraction of a percent.
Yeah, that's the main difference it makes. So even if you manage to kind of make more of your own energy and improve your performance by 1%, that's the difference between podium and non-podium.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, has the rot begun to set in for Sir Keir Starmer? Those popularity ratings are pretty dire, aren't they, considering he hasn't got an opposition as well. But first, should the fire brigade help obese people in non-emergency situations? It's time now for the head-to-head. Jaw-dropping new data has today shown that the fire service were called over 2,000 times last year to help free morbidly obese people from their homes. That figure's nearly 5 times higher than it was 10 years ago, when there were 422 such rescues. And it also means that the fire brigade is now dealing with one obese person every 4 hours. That comes after the cost of treating obese people on the NHS, ballooned to an astonishing £98 billion at the end of last year. That's remarkable, isn't it? It also emerged earlier this year that severely obese adults are twice as likely to call in sick at work. So tonight I am asking, should the fire brigade help obese people in a non-emergency situation, OK? And should obese people as well actually maybe be made to pay to use the fire service? Let me know what you think. Go to gbnews.com/yoursay, tweet me at GBNews. Make sure you vote in our poll. Going head-to-head on this now are the actress Tina Malone and broadcaster Lizzie Cundy. Both of you, great to have you on the show. Thank you very, very much. Lizzie, I'll start with you. Why not? What do you think about this? Should the fire brigade go to help people in a non-emergency situation who have, got stuck on the loo or something?
No, Patrick, not at all. And I think this is very worrying. I mean, it costs £417 for every call. I think it's a real worry. And I think, they should be charged, because they may think twice about actually calling if it's non-emergency.
OK. Tina, would you charge people? Would you make people pay if they have to get winched to Tesco's or something?
OK, sorry, I'm really nervous. It's the first live interview I've done since my husband's suicide 24 weeks ago, so forgive me if I'm
No, that's all right. Just take your time. There's no pressure on anything.
I think what we've got to remember is nobody wants to be fat. I was a big fat bird, if I'm allowed to say fat and bird, for 22 years. I've lost 12 stone 4 pounds. I was size 32, I'm now size 8. Nobody wants to be fat. And I think if you look at it in the way that it's an addiction, it's not something people choose to do. For example, if we were to look at somebody who's drunk, an alcoholic, misbehaving in the pubs, we go after the licensee. If we have drug addicts, we help them, we support them in hospitals or whatever, and we go after the drug dealers. So what I would say is, if you are that big that you need help from the fire brigade, who is enabling you? Because I'm quite sure Domino's or Just Eat don't run up the stairs and deliver your pizza or whatever to your bedroom if you're stuck in there. So who is enabling you to get that food? Why don't they just feed you some salad? I mean, they're not going to run after you, are they, if they're upset that you haven't served them a burger. I'm kind of worried about that. And also the stigma of being a big fatty, right? And it's, I agree. Some of us weren't born with I wish I looked like Lizzie, but I don't. And I struggled with self-esteem and bullying and what have you. But what I would say is, nobody wants to be fat, but it's the most obvious addiction. You don't look at somebody and see drug addiction or see alcoholism or see gambling, but you see it because it's so
Tina,
obvious.
I'll come back to you, Lizzie. I'll bring you back in.
Be helped.
All right, I'll bring you back in there, because Lizzie, I get the idea that maybe people need to be helped a bit if they've got a genuine problem, but I do think maybe some people are just a bit lazy with it. What do you think, Lizzie?
Look, we've got to be responsible for what we put in our mouths. It's costing the NHS, I think, £6.5 billion, a massive strain. 1 in 5 children are obese. That's 23% of our children are so overweight. It's going to have a massive impact on their life, their health. It is so unhealthy, not just for your body, these bad fats, but for your brain. It's so dangerous, Patrick.
But that's a completely different. But that's a different conversation.
If they are charged for that call, they may think twice. They may think about it and look at their lives. I agree with a lot of Tina saying, people need to be educated. They need help. It starts with the parents, schooling, everything else. And the government, I think, like cigarette packets, you should put a warning on takeaway food, like they do on what it does to your lungs, smoking. I know the government's upset with that.
Yeah.
But look at what it actually does to you. Might make people think.
It might
and you can't be ringing and charging, thinking, I know, I'll phone the fire services willy-nilly. We can't do that.
Yeah. I mean, Tina, can I just ask you, look, I think, for want of a better phrase, it would be quite a tough thing to swallow if you had a fire at home and, the disaster happened, right? And actually emerged in the cold light of day the next day that the local fire brigade had been, winching someone off the loo. And it was they're not having a heart attack. We're not calling about someone who happens to be really obese and is having a medical emergency. Someone who's basically stuck in bed. Yeah, I don't really know if that's okay, is it?
Well, you know those 2,000 calls? We would have to look at them individually. If it is that somebody is so huge that they can't get from the living room to they're stuck on the toilet, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the individual cases are, but what I would say is what I'm trying to say is it's not particularly a choice all the time to what you put in your mouth. It's a situation or whatever takes you to that. I don't know, a bad upbringing. I agree with Lizzie about education with children and about that is a completely different argument. That is the parents are to blame. But if you're an adult and you are that big, you can't move, who is enabling you to eat that food, to supply that food? So if you're going to find anyone,
You've got to be responsible for Tina, you've got to be responsible for yourself. You're an adult. You're responsible for what you put in your mouth. And I'm sorry, it's costing.
But if somebody smokes and they get lung cancer, we don't go to the hospital.
One at a time.
If somebody smokes and they're dealt with lung cancer,
all right, stop, both of you, stop. I'll go Lizzie and then I'll let Tina come back and then we'll wrap it up. So go on, Lizzie, what was that?
What I'm trying to say is we really have to be responsible how we look after our bodies and what we put in our mouths. We can't just blame other people or blame adverts. We need to, yes, we need education. We need to look at ourselves, but we can't just, let obese people call the fire services willy-nilly, costing us absolute fortunes. We can't go on like this, and they do need to be charged. I'm sorry, some may not like that, and I have huge sympathy if you are obese. I have a family member that is obese, and I know the heartache that goes through, and a lot of it is to do with mental illness, and a lot of obese people sadly eat because they're unhappy, and that needs to be looked into.
And just very finally, Tina, and we are a bit pressed for time. Look, with respect, you referred to yourself in, quite negative terms earlier. I don't think that was justified. You certainly do look great now. But my point is that you did something about it. You took personal responsibility. So
because I had to for my health, and I agree totally with Lizzie in terms of we have to be responsible to a degree, but it's psychologically an issue. It's a huge issue, pardon the pun, that we need to address in this country.
All right. Look, both of you, thank you.
It's a short-term problem. Patrick, look, it's a short-term solution to charge them. It's a long-term problem. We need to look at it. Really do, because obesity is out of control.
I think we might be, beating the Americans now. I don't mean any disrespect to the Americans, but that's not one aspect that we wanted to beat them.
Well, they gave us McDonald's, didn't they? So that's the problem.
It's all their fault. All right, guys, thank you very much. Look, Lizzie, brilliant to have you on, Lizzie Cundy there, and also Tina. Thank you very, very much. Great to see you again. You're welcome back any time. Tina Malone there, actress as well. Right, OK. Look, who do you agree with? Should the fire brigade help obese people in non-emergency situations? Right, so Sarah says, obviously, if they are needing to go to hospital, then they should help if necessary. But otherwise, they need to be charging for unnecessary call-outs. That would put an end to it. Shazza on X says, they shouldn't need to, but they do. I have a relative in this job, and his stories are really heartbreaking. Gosh, without him and his colleagues, these people, and yes, they've got themselves into this state, I know, but they would just die in their beds. Janet says, it's not the fire brigade's job to hoist morbidly obese people out of their room. There could be a major fire while this is happening. Those obese people need to take responsibility for themselves. We never used to have these morbidly obese people. A few folk that were a bit plump. That was it, right? Harking back to a different time. Your verdict is now in. 20% of you think that the fire brigade should help obese people in non-emergency situations. 80% of you say they shouldn't. Coming up, as Keir Starmer continues his EU loving tour by meeting Emmanuel Macron while refusing to rule out a youth mobility scheme. That is apparently back on the table now, by the way. It wasn't yesterday. Now it is back on the table anyway. Oh, grief. Is he going to... what's he going to do about that? Reform UK spokeswoman and former Tory Minister Anne Widdecombe. She's live shortly. Plus, which famous footballer was spotted belting it out at karaoke last night?
Cause this world is you, baby, and I know you.
Oh, gosh. I'll give you a clue. His goal scoring was a lot better than his singing. Yes, I'll reveal all a bit later. But first, after a botched response to the riot, there was a cronyism scandal, handouts for his union paymasters. Is it any surprise at all that a new poll shows Starmer's popularity plummeting? Conservative MP Greg Smith joins me live and next.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Friday, it's going to be a cool but sunny start to the last day of the week and a settled day more widely across the UK. As high pressure builds in from the south and west, that will boot low pressure out of the way. So after the rather unsettled day across parts of Scotland, it will slowly turn dry as we head into Friday. But still a few showers to come through this evening, particularly across the far north of Scotland, the Northern Isles in particular, where there's a brisk westerly breeze. Elsewhere, though, a settled and calm night to come. Clear skies across the board. The temperatures falling away lower than they did last night. We could be down to 3 or 4 degrees rurally. Many towns and cities in single figures. And as the sun comes up a little later at the moment, it will feel a little bit fresher when you step out on Friday morning. There could be some mist and fog around as well, particularly across parts of the West Country, rurally in Wales. Some areas around the Pennines as well could see some fog first thing. A few showers still across the west of Scotland, but it's particularly the northern areas of Scotland where there's a risk of some showers. They won't be as heavy as they will have been today, and they should ease as we head towards lunchtime and into the afternoon, as well as that, as high pressure becomes more dominant, bringing many of us a fine day. And now I think the best of the sunshine for most of us will be through the morning. A bit more cloud will develop into the afternoon, but it will still feel warm enough in the sunshine with light winds quite widely. A slightly warmer day than today to come tomorrow. Highs of 24 or 25 degrees across south and eastern areas of England. Temperatures in the high teens, low 20s quite widely elsewhere. Now another fresh start to the day to come on Saturday, and then we start to see a risk of some thundery downpours across the south throughout Saturday lunchtime. There may just be a bit more cloud filling in, and I think very few of us will actually see these downpours, but there is a risk of some heavy showers across southern areas. Now that risk increases more across southern areas on Sunday and then more widely into Monday, but temperatures staying just above average.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Coming up, Anne Widdecombe is going to give her verdict on what Keir Starmer's tour of the EU means for Brexit. But first, some more bad news for the Prime Minister, because his approval rating has plunged to a record low of -16. That is, remarkably, a drop of 27 points from his post-election high of +11. So according to a More in Common survey, which is a company that does surveys, almost 2/3 of voters think the government is more interested in serving its own interests than those of the ordinary people. And YouGov polling has also revealed that only 23% approve of the Labour government so far. That is the same as Theresa May's government in 2017, but not quite as low as the final throes of Rishi Sunak's tenure. And he hasn't even raised taxes yet, and he hasn't got an opposition, and Parliament isn't sitting. So, are things already beginning to unravel for Keir Starmer? I'm joined now by Conservative MP Greg Smith. Greg, thank you very much. So, I mean, it's all got a bit Pete Tong for Keir, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's even surprised me how quickly the wheels seem to be coming off this Labour government bus. I mean, we were all staggered that almost the first thing they did was mess around with pensioners, taking away the winter fuel allowance. We were then having to pick our jaws up off the floor as they offered these eye-watering pay rises to please their trade union masters. Then they managed to get themselves embroiled in a scandal in Downing Street around Labour donors getting passes. The bad news seems to keep on coming. I mean, I'm not sure whether they'd even contemplated that they could win the election, whether they came into this with a plan at all, because it seems to be jumping from pillar to post. The OBR called them out when Rachel Reeves tried to pretend there was a 20 billion black hole. Even the OBR have said, actually, no, you saw the figures in January. I just don't know what they're playing at, because actually the national interest, we're stuck with this government for potentially another 5 years. We need them in the national interest to succeed, to pull their finger out and actually sign some sort of grip and get on with doing things that the country actually needs, not what either their union paymasters need or that their blind ideology demands.
It's quite funny because when Boris was under the cosh a bit, he was criticised quite comically for, nipping off to Kiev. I'll just go over there. I mean, Starmer's already doing the European tour. I mean, I do wonder when he'll be back, actually. But, look, you mentioned there that the OBR, basically called them out. I mean, the IFS, to be fair, have clamped back on that and said, no, there is a black hole. And it's on that I do want to discuss what's going on now, because Labour has been warned not to repeat the, quote, woeful budgeting of the Home Office asylum costs that is set to leave around a £4 billion deficit in Treasury spending plans. So the IFS, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, said the department has spent around £2.6 billion more than it had budgeted for asylum, border, visa and passport operations. I think that's in the last year alone. So obviously the Tories are to blame for this absolute farce, though, aren't they? And there's no indication that Labour are going to cut those astronomical costs, are there? So, I mean, you guys do have to shoulder a little bit of the burden, don't we? And do we not have to acknowledge now that taxes are going to go up to pay directly for illegal migrants?
Well, we had a plan that was going to clamp down on illegal migration. It frustrated me, Patrick. It frustrated me. We've talked about this before, the length of time it was taking to get our legislation through, to get it through the courts, to actually get flights off to Rwanda. Of course, again, another thing the Labour government did within days of entering office was scrap the only deterrent we'd put on the statute book in the form of the Rwanda partnership, but they've done nothing else. There seems to be no other plan out there, no other action, and the boats keep coming every single day. And of course, that's going to cost British taxpayers an enormous amount of money. What I'd rather see the government doing is actually clamping down on the people smugglers operating in the English Channel, actually signing partnerships. If it's not Rwanda, okay, it's not Rwanda, but there are other countries out there to ensure that those coming over here,
how did it? You see, the
thing are actually processed in a safe third country.
I mean, the thing that makes me quite confused, right, is if actually the Conservatives had been a bit more honest over the course of the last 3 years, when there was an overspend of something like 7.6 billion on migration and illegal migration, I should say, then actually I think more people, dare I say it, more people on the left and the Refugees Welcome Brigade might have looked at that and gone, actually, you know what, we really do need some kind of fast-track deportation scheme here, because that money is money that could very easily be spent on housing or on anything else, frankly. I do wonder why the Tories kept that from us. Why do you think that was?
I'm not sure that we ever kept that away. I mean, I remember debates in the House of Commons that were clearly showing the cost of hotels before we started to close the asylum hotels down. I think the figure hit £7 million a day at one point, which is clearly utterly unacceptable. I had one in my own constituency, and I fought very hard to get that shut down because it was damaging the local economy of the town. It was taking away a vital resource that businesses use, that tourists use, that visitors use, that the university used on a daily basis. And we had that open clarity about what it was costing. Our solution was to ensure that we could process those asylum claims in a safe third country. The courts thwarted us. There clearly needs to be further action taken to ensure that we could get flights off to a safe third country, Rwanda or otherwise. But what this government's done is just scrap the lot.
Yeah, I mean, look, when I'm looking at this so-called painful budget that we're going to get in October, we're seeing pensioners being traded off, it appears, for union paymasters. We're seeing no plans, really, to deal with illegal immigration, dare I say it, no plans to deal with legal immigration, an issue with us potentially getting back into the EU by the back door, all of this stuff. And I look around now and I think, goodness gracious me, if only we had a proper opposition. So, you know, when's that coming? When's that going? Because this is, you know, kind of an elected dictatorship, metaphorically speaking, at the moment.
Well, look, I'm going to do my bit in the House of Commons to call out this government, to hold them to account. I was already doing that in the weeks after the general election when we were sitting in July. But, of course, you know, we've just had a massive kicking in the polls. We just lost very, very badly. Although Labour didn't win by big numbers in terms of vote share. They only got this majority on 33% of the vote. And what we've got to do is we've got to be a good professional clinical opposition, but we've also got to re-earn the right to be heard again. And the first step in that is electing a new leader, and we are into that process now. We'll be narrowing those candidates down to 4 in the sitting weeks in September, party conference. The final 4 will be put to the test in front of members and you guys in the media and many others before we come to a new leader on the 2nd of November. Yeah, we're in an interim period at the moment. I've got 2 shadow roles and I'm getting stuck into those until the 2nd of November. And it'll be up to the new leader then to form the full opposition with everybody.
Just quickly as well, sorry, because we're a bit pressed for time, but I do wonder whether or not the new Tory leader's manifesto is being written for them, because it's actually just do the opposite of whatever Keir Starmer's doing. I'm assuming that you would not want to ban smoking anywhere near a pub garden.
No, I mean, this is just crazy talk coming out today. I mean, I don't know whether it's the first signs of the red meat being dangled to the ideological lefties on the benches of the Labour government, who are starting to get a bit fidgety. But I mean, what on earth is that about? I mean, we've already got some really draconian anti-smoking legislation from the last government as well as this one, which I voted against at second reading, by the way. But we've got, you know, a plan to stop people smoking in the open air.
Yeah,
this is COVID restrictions all over again, isn't it? It's nuts.
Yeah, well, I am inclined to agree with you on that, but I have a vested interest. But anyway, Greg, thank you very, very much. It's Greg Smith there. You take care, the Conservative MP. Right now, coming up, fun sponge. Keir Starmer deals a hammer blow to hospitality as he confirms plans for a pub garden smoking ban. Punters aren't happy.
Why are you taking all my privileges away and spoiling my life, my enjoyment? Because that's all I've got. It's my cigarettes.
Well, you're going to hear more from Christys. But next, the PM is in Paris and his EU tour is continuing apace. But after he left the door wide open for a free movement deal for under-30s, do you trust a single word Keir Starmer has to say? Reform UK spokeswoman Anne Widdecombe is on next.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Football and gambling can go hand in hand and cause long-term problems. New figures show that young adults aged between 16 and 24 who have bet over the last year are more likely to report mental health issues compared to those in older age groups.
And joining us now to discuss this is Matt Burgess, who is a former gambling addict and now helps those to deal with their own gambling issues.
Yeah, look, I think gambling is one of those things that is so accessible now. You know, everyone's got a kind of mobile phone in their pocket, walks around with a kind of 24-hour casino, if you like. So I think it's really important that people realise that we have to sort of recognise that that is a month of quite condensed gambling, and we don't want people to sort of carry that on into their everyday life, because that's when it can become really risky and you know, it could become addictive.
I had no idea, though, that it was linked to first-time gambling. For the first time, people might be able to pick up and have a go. And then it doesn't end there. It goes on, because by then you've got the bug. Is that how it works?
You've got to remember, for things like the Euros, the World Cup, so you get a lot more people watching football and therefore potentially betting on football.
May I ask you about how severe your own gambling addiction got?
Well, look, I think there was a couple of touch points for me where I realised that things were getting out of hand. There were some times at university where, you know, I kind of thought, you know, I'm definitely doing this a bit too much, but, you know, kind of thought maybe it would move on once I left, but it didn't. It did follow me. And then, you know, I got to points where I was at my worst gambling 16, 17 hours a day. I was spending huge amounts of money. It can spiral out of control very, very quickly. And that was the important thing that we want to highlight is, you know, what can start as fun can become very, very dangerous in a sense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight Now. Keir Starmer met with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris today as he continued his whistle-stop tour of the continent to reset relations with the European Union. Macron and Starmer reportedly agreed to deepen bilateral relations, but Number 10 have been conspicuously light on the detail. And there's been mixed messaging from our Prime Minister himself too. Starmer said this just yesterday.
But we do not have plans for the youth mobility scheme, but we do have plans for a closer relationship between us and the EU as part of that, White said.
Right, then I can reveal to you that straight after that press conference, he refused to actually completely rule out an EU youth mobility scheme to reporters nearby. So there you go. What's going on there? I'm joined now by Reform's Justice and Immigration spokeswoman. It's Anne Widdecombe. Anne, are we getting free movement, do you think?
Well, I think certainly it's on the horizon. I don't know how quickly he will actually do it. But I've always said there are two ways of trying to unstitch Brexit. One, he's not going to do, which is the formal way of trying to rejoin the EU. We're not going to do that. The other is the much more insidious way of just bringing back measures which we had under the EU, such as, for example, free movement. So, yeah, it's there, it's hovering.
So it's hovering. Would that be such a bad thing? You know, would it actually, if it also meant that we had, you know, fewer customs checks, or if it also meant that we were, you know, maybe able to ease a little bit of red tape and EU regulation? What do you think?
Look, one of the reasons why so many of us campaigned and voted for Brexit was that we wanted control of our own borders. We wanted to say who came, on what terms they came, what benefits they could get if they were here, and what qualifications they needed. We wanted to be able to stipulate all of that. Now, you can't do that in a free movement agreement. And now young people can already come here to work, to study, to do all those things for travel. You know, they just need visas. They can still do it. And in my view, control of our borders was paramount.
OK, there's one line from Starmer yesterday that actually worried me quite a lot, and it was in amongst his saying, you know, oh, we need to really guard against the rise of a far-right party in Britain now. What he also said was basically progressives of Europe need to unite. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, it's progressives that have got us into this mess, isn't it? It was progressives who threw the borders open. It was progressives who decided to instill all of this ridiculous diversity and inclusion stuff. It's progressives that mean that we have police officers dancing the Macarena at gay pride. I mean, do we really need progressives of Europe unite?
No, I mean, all the things that people now worry about in this country, including, for example, free speech, which we used to take utterly for granted and now can't. All the things that people worry about are, in fact, the result of so-called progressive measures. Nothing actually very progressive about it. I mean, going back to a point where you can't say what you think. I mean, the next thing is we'll be back to the Inquisition. You know, it's not progressive at all. It's regressive, but it's dressed up as progress.
Well, you've hit on a point there, which actually does feed into something I'm going to be talking about rather a lot when we hit the 10 o'clock hour, which is about whether or not Keir Starmer actually is an incredibly authoritarian man on a bit of a power trip with a huge majority and no opposition. And we've had quite an interesting insight into the psychology of Keir Starmer recently. We had it both after the disorder that we saw in the wake of the Southport incident. We've got it now, dare I say it, with the smoking ban as well. Do you think we should be a bit afraid of Sir Keir Starmer?
Well, I would be afraid of any government with the size of his majority because effectively he can do what he likes. And so long as his backbenchers go along with him, then, he is all powerful. So I would always be rather wary of that situation. But yes, I think his instincts are pretty authoritarian. The smoking ban is just one example of that. But I think his instincts are that if he thinks something is right, then it must be done. And that is the exact reverse of how democracy works.
I think there's also a personality question, isn't there, really, and whether or not he is actually... the times that he was telling us, reminding us in the run-up to the election that he used to be the prosecutor. For me, that's starting to look a little bit more sinister now in the cold light of day. I know Keir Starmer would disagree with this. He'd say that the public voted for him in large numbers. He would say that he stood on a manifesto and that actually he's just doing his best to fix the mess that was left behind. And I appreciate that. But I do wonder, Anne, if everything we've seen from Keir Starmer so far is actually very good news for reform.
I think undeniably reform will benefit from the complete absence, for example, of any plan whatever. Any plan whatever to deal with the small boats, which are still arriving on a daily basis. He's ditched the Rwanda scheme, which wasn't actually working, but nevertheless was some sort of a deterrent. He's effectively said, we don't need a deterrent. Well, OK, here, what are you going to put in its place? And the answer to that is absolutely nothing. Yes, that will play into reform's hands very well. But I'd far rather we had a government that actually was committed to sorting things out than we have to spend the next 5 years pointing out to the nation that they're not doing that.
I can't help but wonder, Anne, whether there are some people, you traditional Conservative voters now, who are looking at this in, 6 or 7 weeks on or whatever we are from Starmer coming to power, seeing everything that we've seen and thinking, oh, goodness gracious me, if we had actually all just voted Tory and not Reform, then this bloke would have nowhere near the level of power he's got now. How would you respond to that, Anne?
I would say you had a very short memory, or that they had a very short memory. Just think of the unholy mess that the Conservatives were in. Voting for the Conservatives was voting for a continuation of that mess. And I don't believe that the votes for reform were protest votes. They were votes that said there is a certain type of Britain that we want to see, and reform alone is offering it, and we are still alone in offering it.
All right. Well, look, Anne, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure. That's the wonderful Anne Widdecombe now, a Reform spokeswoman. Coming up, we do talk a bit Meghan Markle, actually, because she's outrageously claimed that she uses her, quotes, global spotlight to sell clothes, and that is a good thing for the world. Given up on changing the world, then, have we, Meghan, or not? But next, as Keir Starmer confirms plans to ban smoking in pub gardens, small parks, outside football grounds, is our authoritarian Prime Minister actually just ushering in a depressing nanny state? Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Friday, it's going to be a cool but sunny start to the last day of the week and a settled day more widely across the UK. As high pressure builds in from the south and west, that will boot low pressure out of the way. So after the rather unsettled day across parts of Scotland, it will slowly turn dry as we head into Friday. But still a few showers to come through this evening, particularly across the far north of Scotland, the Northern Isles in particular, where there's a brisk westerly breeze. Elsewhere, though, a settled and calm night to come. Clear skies across the board. The temperatures falling away lower than they did last night. We could be down to 3 or 4 degrees rurally. Many towns and cities in single figures. And as the sun comes up a little later at the moment, it will feel a little bit fresher when you step out on Friday morning. There could be some mist and fog around as well, particularly across parts of the West Country, rurally in Wales. Some areas around the Pennines as well could see some fog first thing. A few showers still across the west of of Scotland, but it's particularly the northern areas of Scotland where there's a risk of some showers. They won't be as heavy as they will have been today, and they should ease as we head towards lunchtime and into the afternoon, as well as that, as high pressure becomes more dominant, bringing many of us a fine day. And now I think the best of the sunshine for most of us will be through the morning. A bit more cloud will develop into the afternoon, but it will still feel warm enough in the sunshine with light winds quite widely. A slightly warmer day than today to come tomorrow. Highs of 24 or 25 degrees across south and eastern areas of England. Temperatures in the high teens, low 20s quite widely elsewhere. Now another fresh start to the day to come on Saturday, and then we start to see a risk of some thundery downpours across the south throughout Saturday lunchtime. There may just be a bit more cloud filling in, and I think very few of us will actually see these downpours, but there is a risk of some heavy showers across southern areas. Now that risk increases more across southern areas on Sunday and then more widely into Monday, but temperatures staying just above average.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash, and you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
I can't believe this.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, you shocked me. I never won a penny in my life.
If I was there, I'll buy you a drink.
Get your entry in now for another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash. Text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
we will use it to deliver change, to restore service and respect to politics, tread more lightly on your lives, and unite our country.
tread lightly on our lives. Well, now we've got this.
My starting point on this is to remind everyone that over 80,000 people lose their lives every year because of smoking.
Is Starmer an authoritarian on a power trip? And I think this woman speaks for the nation.
Why are you taking all my privileges away and spoiling my life, my enjoyment? Because that's all I've got. It's my cigarettes.
You're going to hear a lot more from Glynis, but is it any wonder that Keir Starmer is absolutely tanking in the polls? Also tonight...
The bulk of the bullying and abuse that I was experiencing, it's not catty, it's cruel.
So Meghan Markle is now apparently using her royal title to make money from jewellery and fashion lines. Should she be stopped? On my panel tonight is GB News star Nana Acquia, Tory peer Lord Bailey, and ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Lazarow, and which footballer has been caught going for it at karaoke.
Cause this world is you, lady, and I know you.
Oh, get ready, Preston, here we go. Is Sir Keir Starmer drunk on power and out of control? Next.
Good evening from the GB newsroom. It's just gone 10 o'clock. Your top story this hour. The Prime Minister has confirmed a ban on outdoor smoking is being considered because of the huge burden smoking puts on the NHS and the taxpayer. According to what the Sun newspaper says are secret Whitehall papers, ministers are considering making it illegal to light up in outdoor restaurants, playgrounds and outside nightclubs and stadiums. Hospitality bosses say new restrictions would cost jobs, but Sir Keir Starmer insists action is needed.
My starting point on this is to remind everyone that over 80,000 people lose their lives every year because of smoking. That's a preventable death. It's a huge burden on the NHS, and of course it's a burden on the taxpayer. So yes, we are going to take decisions in this space. More details will be revealed, but this is a preventable series of deaths, and we've got to take the action to reduce the burden on the NHS and reduce the burden on the taxpayer.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has said he discussed resetting relations with the EU during a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris today. Sir Keir Starmer's talks with French leaders focused on a new treaty expected to take 6 months to finalise. Illegal migration was also on the agenda as leaders aim to enhance intelligence sharing to tackle smuggling gangs. It follows news that over 20,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel into the UK this year, with hundreds arriving just yesterday. Meanwhile, Conservative leadership hopeful Tom Tugendhat has pledged to introduce a legally binding annual cap on net migration of 100,000 if he becomes leader. Delivering a speech on public services this afternoon, the former Security Minister said high levels of population growth fuelled by immigration could not continue.
The Conservative Party, under my leadership, will commit to a legally binding annual cap on non-British annual net migration of 100,000. We cannot sustain the hundreds of thousands it is today.
Now, a van driver has been convicted for smuggling a group of migrants in a hidden compartment who were found banging and screaming for help as they were slowly starved of oxygen. Jurors at Lewes Crown Court unanimously found Anas Al-Mustafa, a father of 2, guilty of trafficking 7 people in a specially adapted van on board a ferry to New Haven. Crew members on the ship used an axe to free the migrants after hearing their pleas for help. The 43-year-old will be sentenced next Friday. 9 children and 2 adults have been taken to hospital after a chlorine leak was reported in a northwest London swimming pool. The London Fire Brigade said Everyone Active Sports Centre in Welby will be remaining closed until further notice. And teenage swimmer Poppy Maskell created history with Britain's first gold of the Paris 2024 Paralympics. The 19-year-old's time of 1 minute and 3 seconds broke the world record by 1/3 of a second, and she won the race. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer tweeted to congratulate Miss Maskell on her fantastic achievement. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The nation is now waking up to the idea that Keir Starmer might be a man with a dangerous authoritarian streak who is drunk on power. He won't stop the boats, he won't stop knife crime, he won't stop rampant drug use in the streets, he won't help homeless Brits, he won't provide better accommodation for our armed forces. No, he's going to criminalise smoking in the park or out the back of the pub. That's, of course, when he's not got the police arresting 11-year-olds, isn't it? When he was elected, he told us this.
We will use it to deliver change, to restore service and respect to politics, tread more lightly on your lives, and unite our country.
He was going to tread lightly on our lives. Then last night, the front page of The Sun emerged, and it was revealed that he's planning on banning smoking in pub gardens, small parks, outside nightclubs and near football grounds. So the Prime Minister then confirmed that he's actually seriously considering this.
My starting point on this is to remind everyone that over 80,000 people lose their lives every year because of smoking. That's a preventable death. It's a huge burden on the NHS, and of course it's a burden on the taxpayer. So yes, we are going to take decisions in this space. More details will be revealed.
It is the most authoritarian thing possible for a leader to say, I'm doing this for your own good. Rubbish. Even people on the left think it's rubbish. Ian Dunt, the notorious left-wing journalist, tweeted, banning smoking in outside space is the worst kind of prurient, hectoring, interfering, puritanical BS. No health basis to it, just a flat-out act of social control. Smokers do not really cost the NHS a load of money. There is a figure doing the rounds that it costs the NHS around 17 billion quid a year. That figure comes from a pressure group called Action on Smoking and Health that wants to ban smoking. Smokers often pay far more in tobacco duty than they cost the state in healthcare. Numerous studies back this up. One from the New England Journal of Medicine, smoking cessation would lead to an increased healthcare cost. A study from Finland, smokers' lifetime healthcare costs were €4,700 less than non-smokers. The Netherlands, lifetime health expenditure was highest amongst healthy living people and lowest for smokers. This is the kind of policy that can only be dreamt up by someone devoid of a soul and a social life. It will kill the nightlife industry. It will kill pubs. For anyone watching this, by the way, who doesn't smoke, fair enough, obviously, and thinks that this is OK from Starmer, it's smoking in wide-open parks that's banned for our own good now. Then it'll be a limit on the amount of calories that you can buy in one shop at the supermarket. Then it'll be no takeaways after midnight. Then it'll be goodness knows what else. That is the trajectory. If Keir Starmer goes ahead with this, it will be political suicide. Here's a prime example of what will be said in every single pub all over the country.
And it's the cigarette taxes that keep the country going. And now he's big. Does he not want people to have a life? Everything. He's already took me £200 eating allowance away. Do you know what I mean? And not just me. And now he's clamping down on this. What is wrong with the man? Why are you taking all my privileges away and spoiling my life, my enjoyment? Because that's all I've got. It's my cigarettes. What else is he going to do to cripple us all? What? Do you know, we'll be paying for fresh air soon.
He probably thinks she's a far-right lunatic. Over the last few weeks, Keir Starmer has revealed his true self to the nation, hasn't he? He's tanking in the polls. He's down to -16 in the approval ratings. Around 9.5 million people voted for Labour at the last election out of a population of 70 million, OK? Many might think that he is an out-of-touch authoritarian control freak. Let's get the thoughts of my panel. GB News presenter Nana Akua, Conservative peer Lord Bailey and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larder. Look, Sean, I'm going to start with you on this, if that's all right, and just ask you directly, you know, do you think that Keir Starmer is a dangerous authoritarian?
Look, what I think is he's a man who feels like he can just make a rule and it's best for us. But it takes away all of our agency. We know what's the best for us. We've had enough controls around smoking now to confine smoking to those who are really committed and want to do it. It's a decision for an adult to make. If he really wants to save the NHS money, he should look at obesity. 30,000 people die from obesity. It leads to high levels of diabetes. Diabetes is the single greatest cause of blindness in the country. The cost is huge, far bigger than a smoker could ever cost. But the reason he's picked smoking is because it's low-hanging fruit, they're an easy target, and it sounds good at the dinner parties he goes to. Whereas really he should be concentrating on the health of the country, and that starts with obesity. We've just overtaken the Americans, a proportion of us that are overweight.
No, can I just say, what the heck is this doing on his radar? We've got a knife crime epidemic. We've got, you know, massive issues when it comes to illegal immigration. We've got all sorts going on, a financial mess, all of that stuff. And he's there. He thinks it's a great idea to ban smoking in pub gardens.
Well, this is just smoke and mirrors, isn't it? He's trying to... What he's come up with is an answer to something where there wasn't really a problem. So he's come up with that. So we're all talking about this. Instead of looking at the knife crime epidemic, as you said, all the other things that they could be handling as a Labour government, they're not. Look, I used to smoke, and then somebody told me in my 20s, and somebody said to me, look, you carry on with that, you're going to get lips like an anus. And that put me off. Excuse me, apologies if anyone's upset with that. But I could just... And I thought to myself, that is the end of my my smoke.
I'm never going to get that image out of my mind now.
It is. I was like, ooh. And
we got it.
Gave up, you got it. And I gave up there and then. I think this is pretty disingenuous. Right. Look, if you really wanted to stop smoking, he could ban the thing altogether because there are no health benefits to it whatsoever, but they're not. So this is just a way of...
OK, Matthew, I put it to you, right, so I smoke. I'm much healthier than Keir Starmer. I ran 6K this morning.
You're also 30 years younger than him.
Fine, but I'm sorry, but I am much healthier. I will not take lectures in health from that man.
Will you take them from anybody?
Yes, I will. I would.
OK.
If Keir Starmer was the picture of health, then I absolutely...
But he's not, but he does play football, so he can run it. I mean, he's...
He plays at power... Look, I'm sorry, Matthew.
But I'm not... Look,
what right has that man got to tell me or anyone that I couldn't walk outside my flat, walk into an empty park and have a cigarette?
No, I was only joking, because I remember when Therese Coffey and Ken Clark were health secretaries, people wouldn't take lectures from them because, Ken Clark was smoking, and he likes a pint. Look, I think this is a daft policy. I suspect it will be gone within the week. I think it sort of overtook the government, and I think it was unwise to give the clip that he did, which did sound patronising and hectoring.
It's also false. Can I just say, it is also false. The idea that smokers cost the NHS a huge amount of money every single year is not true.
And also, I mean, the optics of lecturing people about smoking in a pub garden from the courtyard of the Elysee Palace was not lost on me with my former Labour comms hat on.
Hello, fellow members of the working
Yes, down the Dog and Duck in Donny.
Can I just say that, actually, look, I would be happy to see smoking banned altogether. I'm not saying, but I get it that you want to smoke, Patrick. But for somebody who is a health expert, I can tell you now, there literally is no benefit.
But do you know,
if it were brought out today, smoking would not be allowed.
But do you know the most important thing about this, all joking aside, it's what he's not concentrating on. We have a knife crime epidemic in this country that is punishing particular communities to the death of their children. Yeah. That's where his focus would be, because no matter which community you were from, that would be what you'd want your PM to be speaking about. This sounds like the kind of conversation they're having around the dinner tables in posh places in London.
It's subterfuge. It's trying to... Don't look over here, look over there. I mean, we've got a massive immigration problem. He won't answer questions about that, though, will he? But this is what he's coming up with for us. It's a bit like Rishi Sunak when he came out with his one.
Well, I think now that possibly, Matthew, one of the damaging things for Keir Starmer in all of this is that regardless of whether or not this comes to fruition, if they scrap it, and by the way, we've got the front pages in about 15 minutes and it's not good.
No, I mean, it's not a great day. They've had better 24 hours.
We've now seen the inside of his brain, haven't we? And actually, it looks...
Well, we're not sure it came from him. One of the papers says that it's a Sue Gray idea.
He's the PM.
He's an idiot.
He's the PM. He's the PM. It all comes from him.
I think
Well, it ultimately ends with him. It doesn't all start with him. I mean, yes, he's the one who has to make the decisions.
He has 158-seat majority.
Let me say on this issue of is he an authoritarian generally? I think the answer is that this may be a useful, there may be a silver lining to this cloud, which is this may be a shock to the government, to remind the government that it needs to restrain any nanny state instincts, and it needs to remember the words that Keir said so eloquently on Downing Street, that you need to tread lightly on people's lives.
First and foremost, I don't want him treading on my life at all, and secondly, you cannot deny your nature. If you're authoritarian, it will come out again in some...
He's going to do a triathlon with an Ironman with Patrick.
Bang in my mouth the whole way. No, but one of the things I was thinking about this, and this is how do you enforce it, OK? I mean, so conceive, and I've been trying to think about how would you, because if you're going to roll this out, you're going to have some level of enforcement. So you're going to end up with like smoke wardens, like your traffic wardens. The other aspect to it, and I'm not trying to go down some kind of conspiracy theory rabbit hole here, I just can't see any other way of doing it, is that you would have some kind of facial recognition technology in a park or something, and you'd get a fine through the post if you're not allowed...
Oh, I think you're thinking this is... I mean, let's face it, one of the reasons this looks daft is because it not just makes the government look authoritarian, it makes the government look out of touch. Let me just finish, because at the moment, if you go into a lot of parks across the country, you will... What's we wafting across the smell of weed. Yeah. So that's not being enforced at the moment, and people know that, so it makes the government look like idiots because the public know it's not going to be enforceable.
Well, this is also literally the last straw for the entertainment industry. They don't need this. They've just come out of COVID and everything else like that. Look, I don't like smoking. I hate the vaping.
I agree.
When the smoke comes out, and people sit out there and go, well, if you don't like it, you can go because I'm outside, and so I don't like that. If it was me, I'd ban it altogether. But I just think, frankly, that this is just a ridiculous idea.
Look,
it's not going to work.
The real problem here is, do you remember when Rishi Sunak had his smoking ban? And
that's coming back.
He was pilloried by members of the Labour Party. I'm sure Keir Starmer was...
No, they all voted for it. Every single Labour MP voted for it.
I'm sure they were told to, because this was coming along. My point being, if that's ridiculous, so is this.
But Sean, can I ask you a question? If so, the Sunak-style smoking ban, which is the age limit, so increasing the age limit year by year, so people born now, will you vote for it if it comes to the Lords, even if the rest of the party do?
Neither of those two things work. Neither of those two things. You're going to have this bizarre thing where my 14-year-old son will never be able to smoke, and my 17-year-old daughter will be. It's weird. It doesn't work.
Well, at least he was trying to get rid of it. He was trying to get rid of it.
But you have to allow people a certain level of freedom and autonomy.
I agree
if you're going to ban smoking, there's a lot of other things you should ban before that.
I can tell you, when they see those headlines, they'll be thinking, maybe we'll be a bit less nanny state in our policy discussions.
I think there's been a big concern here about Keir Starmer, and I think rightly so. You know, 11-year-olds being arrested, whatever it is they might have done, you know, but 11-year-olds being arrested, I mean, the doors kicked in, and you've got, you know, some...
We're sending the stormtroopers around to the lady in the Vauxhall Park.
What about
do you know it is, Patrick? You know what it boils down to? Government is much harder than it looks.
Fair enough.
That's what it boils down to.
Well, there we go. I'm glad I'm not doing it. Anyway, another good start. Thank you very much. Coming up, I'll have the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, plus what famous footballer has been caught going for it at the old karaoke.
Because this world is you, lady, and I know you.
Oh, it's a bad day out. I'll reveal who that is very, very soon, in case you can't already guess. But first, Meghan Markle claimed that she's using her self-styled global spotlight to flog clothes and jewellery. So has the Duchess of Sussex got any relevance anymore? Is she just a low-rent Kim Kardashian? Stay tuned for the editor-at-large in the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, who's got the inside track. She's going to join me in the studio next.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
A court on Wednesday ruled that a teenager was wrongly ignored before being forced into end-of-life care. Sudiksha Thirumalesh, who was 19, died last year after being prevented from travelling abroad for treatment after doctors said her condition was incurable. Doctors said Ms. Thirumalesh's objection to their decision was unreasonable and that she should have all life-sustaining treatment ended and be put on a palliative care pathway. Last August, a ruling said that the teenager lacked mental capacity to make her own decisions, but 3 judges in the Court of Appeal overturned that decision last week. Lawyers said the move reaffirms the right of patients to disagree with their doctors. The teenager remained fully conscious while being treated by the University Hospitals Birmingham NHS Foundation Trust. Well, to discuss this tragic case, Sudiksha's father, Thirumalesh, and brother, Varshan, join me now. Thank you so much for joining me in these desperately sad circumstances. This is very important for other people who may find themselves in a similar position, that they will be able to make decisions about their own care with the support of their families, rather than the sometimes arrogance of the medical profession who think that they know best. So you must be, I hope, very reassured by this judgment that Sudiksha has achieved something for other people.
Yes, definitely, because
This arrogance transformed into cruelty towards my sister's care and ill treatment of the whole family. They think they are on the top of the hierarchical spectrum, and they treated us like we were on the bottom of the lower end of the chains, or rather as low class, but we ensured that our class remained.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, I've got the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. I am in a couple of minutes' time, though, about to tell you about some remarkable Harry and William news that has just landed. We'll get a bit more detail on that, and then I'll bring it to you. But first, Meghan Markle has found another use for her global spotlight. She's promoting designer brands. Well, the runaway royal turned QVC saleswoman has invested in a handbag brand called Sesta Collective, using her recent trip to Colombia to flaunt one of her 568 quid purses. The recent investment comes after her own brand, American Riviera Orchard, ran into trademark issues. Look, speaking to the New York Times, she said this fantastic quote. It says, times where I know there's a global spotlight and attention will be given to each detail of what I may or may not be wearing. Then I support designers that have really great friendships with, or smaller up-and-coming brands that haven't gotten the attention they should be getting. That's one of the most powerful things that I'm able to do. And that's simply wearing, like, an earring. Well, joining me in the studio now to go into more detail, this is the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Charlotte, thank you very, very much. Should Meghan be allowed to be using her royal titles in order to make money from things like fashion brands, etc.?
Well, this is exactly why the Queen said you can't be half in, half out, because she probably foresaw problems like this coming down the line, because the problem isn't so much her using her fame and her royal associations to promote a brand, because actually Catherine does do that. She promoted Catherine Zoriada's earrings and made Catherine Zoriada an overnight hit. But the problem is Meghan using that word, the global stage, because Meghan's used her connections to the royal family to create pseudo-royal tours, and on the royal tours promote handbags that she's invested in. And that's where it's really complicated, because she's meeting the Vice President of Colombia wearing a handbag that she's invested in. And previously, she's worn this Sesta handbag brand for lunch with Cameron Diaz, where she got papped in California. I think that's also OK, because she's just being papped in California, possibly on purpose. But when you're presenting to Colombia your association with the royal family and with Britain on the world stage, and also flogging a handbag, QVC style, that's where it's just embarrassing.
It's Kim Kardashian style. So it's influencer style, isn't it? So when she was not arguably helping to prop up some quite despotic regimes like Nigeria and Colombia, where there's big controversies there, she's now essentially a brand ambassador, an influencer.
She's always been an influencer, to be fair to Meghan. She was an influencer before she met Harry. But what she's doing now, which is slightly ambiguous, is she's saying, well, I'm only promoting sort of brands with a women focus or good well-being focus. You know, this is a brand made in Africa. So she's kind of trying to be altruistic, but it's actually kind of painting a confusing picture, because the Kardashians are just really open. They're just like, we are flogging ourselves. Please give us money for stuff. Whereas Meghan's like, well, actually, you know, I'm an extended member of the royal family. I'm a duchess. This is, you know, that's where it's too confusing, and there is an association with the British royal family.
Right, well, we can now get you some breaking news, and this is just landing to us as of a few minutes ago. The Mirror is reporting that Prince Harry and Prince William secretly reunited at his uncle's funeral after the Duke made a secret visit to the UK. So Harry reportedly flew from his US home to join William at the service for Lord Robert Fellows, reuniting with his brother and, of course, the future king, Prince William. Well, it's huge news coming after the Daily Mail's diary editor Richard Eden revealed that sources told him that Harry's decision not to give any interviews for the paperback relaunch of Spare proves that the Duke is desperate for royal reconciliation. Well, Charlotte, at face value, this looks like, oh, OK, well, maybe they actually did reconcile, but actually, it's not necessarily the truth, is it?
I don't think William and Harry spoke to each other at this funeral, but it's a really big deal that they were in the same room, they're in the same county, they're in Norfolk together for this funeral. And Lady Jane Fellows is obviously Diana's sister, so it was quite likely Harry was going to come, but it's somehow still quite surprising because the war between them is so intense that there was some talk before the funeral that actually Harry wouldn't come in case it overshadowed the funeral. But they've managed to do it undercover. I mean, it's the first we've heard of it, so that's pretty brilliant.
I suppose, look, hey, good for him, right? I mean, he obviously felt strongly enough about this that he wanted to go and, in his mind, do the right thing. They kept it completely under wraps. So, in that sense, good for him. The other side of it, I will point out, is, you know, for all of this fanfare about him not necessarily being safe in the UK and the gaze of the publicity, I mean, he has just proven that he basically can come and go from the UK without anyone noticing quite easily.
Yes, because you would have thought he'd be flanked by his normally huge security detail. He can't go anywhere with all the security he needs because he's always in danger. So, obviously, he wasn't, you know, flanked by a cavalcade on this occasion because he slipped in and out. But it does go well with what Richard Eden was saying in the Daily Mail, was there's a lot of mood music at the moment that he is trying to extend an olive branch or not step on any landmines. You know, the fact that he didn't publish any additional information in his book is actually quite a big deal because he could have used this as an opportunity to throw more mud, basically, at the royal family, and everyone was expecting him to, and probably even he was expected to when he signed that deal with the book publishers, who have been pushing him to write another chapter. It's really important to publishers that he does, but he didn't. And so, you know, the mood music we're hearing is that he is trying at last to make amends.
Well, that is interesting. So one eyewitness at this funeral has told the Mirror, we never saw them speak to each other and they kept their distance. So, you know, that's where it is. But I suppose at least they were in the same room, as you were saying, and that is maybe a step towards some progress. I mean, it would be absolutely remarkable, though, wouldn't it? I mean, I don't know how that happens. How on earth could there be Why would Harry, do you think, be desperate for a royal reconciliation? How could he possibly do that and square it with Meghan?
Well, that's the thing. He is stuck between a rock and a hard place because he's got William, who's actually a very stubborn character, and Meghan, who's, well, basically also a very stubborn character, you know, and he is kind of caught in the middle of these great forces in his life. I think Charles is softening and, you know, open to the idea of a reconciliation. But I think Harry, he's potentially the novelty's worn off a bit, you know. He's realised he's quite isolated over there. He hasn't spoken to some of his friends for years. And he needs to find a way to get back into the royal family and, you know, not letting off huge landmines by writing rude things about them in a book is somewhere to start. And it could be a great many years before he even thinks of coming over here or reconciling. But it's got to start somewhere, hasn't it?
I wonder if William knew. That would be an interesting subplot to all of this, wouldn't it? If Harry just emerged through the back of the church doors, you know, we'll have to wait and see.
I think it's likely William knew.
William, he knows everything. All right, so, well, look, thank you very, very much, and thank you for enlightening us a bit more as well with that breaking news. Harry and William have at least been in the same room at the same time for the first time in quite a while. But Charlotte Griffiths, editor-at-large at The Mail on Sunday. Coming up, the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Keir Starmer's smoking ban is dominating. He's managed to unite both the left and the right in outrage. So well done, Sir Keir. My panel will give you their views on that. Plus,
because this world is you, baby, and I know you.
I'll reveal which famous footballer was caught giving it some welly at a karaoke last night. It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Friday, it's going to be a cool but sunny start to the last day of the week and a settled day more widely across the UK. As high pressure builds in from the south and west, that will boot low pressure out of the way. So after the rather unsettled day across parts of Scotland, it will slowly turn dry as we head into Friday. But still a few showers to come through this evening, particularly across the far north of Scotland, the Northern Isles in particular, where there's a brisk westerly breeze. Elsewhere, though, a settled and calm night to come. Clear skies across the board. The temperatures falling away lower than they did last night. We could be down to 3 or 4 degrees rurally. Many towns and cities in single figures. And as the sun comes up a little later at the moment, it will feel a little bit fresher when you step out on Friday morning. There could be some mist and fog around as well, particularly across parts of the West Country, rurally in Wales. Some areas around the Pennines as well could see some fog first thing. A few showers still across the west of Scotland, but it's particularly the northern areas of Scotland where there's a risk of some showers. They won't be as heavy as they will have been today, and they should ease as we head towards lunchtime and into the afternoon, as well as that, as high pressure becomes more dominant, bringing many of us a fine day. And now I think the best of the sunshine for most of us will be through the morning. A bit more cloud will develop into the afternoon, but it will still feel warm enough in the sunshine with light winds quite widely. A slightly warmer day than today to come tomorrow. Highs of 24 or 25 degrees across south and eastern areas of England. Temperatures in the high teens, low 20s quite widely elsewhere. Now another fresh start to the day to come on Saturday, and then we start to see a risk of some thundery downpours across the south throughout Saturday lunchtime. There may just be a bit more cloud filling in, and I think very few of us will actually see these downpours, but there is a risk of some heavy showers across southern areas. Now that risk increases more across southern areas on Sunday and then more widely into Monday, but temperatures staying just above average.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akweer. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys. Tonight I am holding in my hands the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, so let's do it. The Metro, we're going to start with. Pubs fury at Starmer's outdoor clampdown, stub out this cigs ban plan, they say. The Independent, Starmer's smoking ban plan has pubs and clubs fuming, banning smoking in pub gardens, outside restaurants. Sports grounds will mean closures and job cuts, says the hospitality industry. The PM, though, says we've got to take action to reduce the huge burden smokers put on the NHS. Can I just say he's going to have to start proving this huge burden at some point, by the way. But anyway, the Daily...
That's after he's taken you on the triathlon.
That's after he's taken me on a triathlon. The Daily Express. Has Sir Keir sounded death knell for our pubs, with a picture of Nigel Farage having a pint and a fag outside a pub today. It's nanny statism, says The Express. Let's go to The Guardian. Gosh, this is remarkable. Starmer risks clash with pub firms over plan for outdoor smoking ban. They say that it could do serious economic harm. The Guardian also goes off on EU working on fresh mobility plan for the UK. So they knock on the story of the last couple of days a bit. So this is the latest development in our EU reset. It says EU member states are working on an updated proposal for a youth mobility scheme with Britain after an earlier paper by the European Commission was rejected out of hand by Labour in April. So they are working on it. It's happening, right? So there we go. Let's go to the front of the Telegraph. Workers to get the right to demand a 4-day week. So the Tories warn of compressed hours, plan for staff to leave businesses petrified. Let me go into a bit of detail on this and then we'll discuss. So it says workers are to be given new rights to demand a 4-day week in a law planned for this autumn, which is nowish, isn't it, soon, next couple of months. The Telegraph understands the system of compressed hours, which lets an employee work their contracted week's hours in 4 days rather than 5, will be included in the package of new workers' rights. It will form part of a law being championed by Angela Rayner, the Deputy PM, in close consultation with the trade unions as well as businesses. Right, OK. Nana, good idea or not? 4-day week?
Well, this has just come from people who only really work 9 to 5, who don't really understand anything. It feels like a really old-fashioned, backdated policy that has obviously been created by civil servants because they do normal 9 to 5s. And I remember Jacob Rees-Mogg trying to get a lot of them back into the office. They didn't want to do that. Obviously, some employers, I think they have to offer a level of flexibility, but it was not enshrined in law. But this will mean that an employer now has the control. I just think that the Labour government are putting together things that will completely destroy growth in the economy in every way, shape and form. The cigarette ban, if they go with that, or the thing not smoking outside, destroying the outdoor industry and the pub industry. This will destroy employment industries because employers will not want to take on employees. Why would you want to take somebody on who can demand that, oh, no, I have to work 4 days? That's not even reasonable.
This is Angela Rayner's brainchild.
Ridiculous.
There's a couple of things I'd say. Firstly, Britain has had a very, very long-standing poor level of efficiency, you know, of productivity, and this will do nothing to change that. And if this is a government serious about growth, they have to look at our productivity. I cannot believe the Deputy Prime Minister got this past the Chancellor. If this Chancellor is serious about growth, if she wants to be taken serious in any way by businesses, she simply can't do this. And when that article talks about the businesses they've been working with, I'd be very interested to hear which business sectors or individual business people they've been working with who said a 4-day week is a good idea for their business. Because for most businesses, that spells death. And the most important thing, Labour always claim to be for the working man or woman, working class people, blue-collar people. There's a lot of blue-collar jobs where that simply will not float. Yeah. So those people lose their jobs, or those jobs will be given to a completely different country. How are Labour squaring that with their supposed history?
All right, OK, Matthew, do you want to come back to that? I mean, the key line, one of the key lines for me in this is that it's apparently been drawn up in consultation with the unions. You know, the other aspect of this is that this appears to be Angela Rayner's baby. You know, Starmer's got to give us something. Is this it?
No, I mean, look, there's a key problem with the Telegraph article, which is it says the workers have the right to demand a 4-day week. That's not true. It is will be to request a 4-day week. So two things.
You
One,
can
this
do
is
that anyway.
Let me finish. We're not talking about people doing fewer hours. We're talking about some people who may wish to do the same number of hours over a fewer number of days, i.e. doing a very long days. Frankly, in the industry we work in, people tend to work 10 or 12-hour days and do fewer of them per week. So, you know, it's that sort of... and they would have the right to ask for that. And if an employer doesn't think it will work for their business, the employer can say no.
Let's be clear. If that detail, I accept, is a very important one.
It is.
If you could request as opposed to demand, you'll simply be told no. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and most businesses will say no, but some businesses will say yes. But the point is, why that's important...
Why can't they just do that already now?
They can in many cases.
You can, but you don't have the legal right to request it. They have the right for the employer to have to give them an answer.
Why it's important that Labour has said this or not, because it demonstrates to the markets, to employers, to people who generate wealth, they haven't got a Scooby.
The truth of the matter is quite a lot of firms do this, do 4-day weeks. They tend to be kind of the more, you know, the sort of start-ups, you know, and things like that, with, you know, ones with posh coffee machines in the corner. I don't think it's going to be a major thing, but it gives you the right to ask your employer and have that conversation.
Where did you hear that it's not a demand that employers can make? I'm just asking, hang on. I'm asking you, where did you hear that it's not a demand? Because that's what the article says. And I know Angela Rayner has been working on this sort of thing for a while. She was trying to get rid of the gig economy. So just explain to me where it is that it says that it's not a prerequisite. And
because the policy, because unlike the Telegraph article, which has got its own agenda, the policy mirrors the fact that you've been able to, or you've been about the right to ask for flexible working, which is already enshrined, and so this is an extension of that, of an existing.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean anything if you could already.
Exactly.
This is the problem. This becomes government by decree. Then. And press releases. If you can already do that, what exactly are we changing?
You're changing because at the moment you have the right to work flexibly, which is general. You know, it would make that specific. You have the right to ask for 4 days.
All right. Well, hey, look, you know, there'll be some people out there now who think, you know, the compressed hours thing could work well for them, and I can see that. All right, there'll be other people who think this is realistically going to be people working from home.
Friday afternoon off sounds fun.
Everyone will do Monday to Thursday, won't they? And then
you never get a moment off.
You see it in London.
You know, I'm a martyr. The thing is, what I will say about this is, just quickly, is I always feel a bit squiffy talking about these things because I am one of the few people who is genuinely very lucky to do a job which is also their hobby, right? Like, this isn't work for me. This is just great. I can't believe I'm allowed to. Probably not for long, but anyway.
Well, earlier we thought you might not.
I mean, I would choose to do this generally, you know. So I'm not really equipped to say, well, you know, you should, you know.
Yeah, but it wouldn't work there.
Yeah,
it wouldn't work if you said to the boss, oh, you know what, I'm only going to do 4 days a week. I can only do these days. I think, Patrick, you might be.
Listen,
I
I used to
for much longer.
I used to temp. Patrick, I used to
nothing about the boss class.
I used to temp. Yeah, I used to temp. I used to end up sweeping up factories, doing cleaning. I did not like that. And if I thought I could compress my hours, I would compress them.
I'm not. Yeah, that's true. Just because I don't want to compress my hours doesn't necessarily mean I will be allowed to compress them, I suppose. But anyway, now we've been teasing this throughout the show. Which footballer was caught doing karaoke in a pub? This might give it away. In Plymouth last night. We can now reveal it.
Well, you better have a future. You better wanna be free. 'Cause this world is you, baby, and I know you will.
It's Wayne Rooney. There you go. Can I just say, why has he gone a cappella?
Confidence.
He thinks he sounds good, unfortunately.
I sense a second career.
Someone needs to have a word with him and just say, look, Wayne, you know, it's not for you, mate. Fantastic striker, fantastic bloke. You're not going to be on X Factor anytime soon. Good for him, though. You know what
Charity single for Christmas.
Charity single would have to be charity. You'd have to give it away. Yeah, but anyway, right, coming up as yet another Labour bigwig speaks out against Starmer's VAT raid on private schools. Does the controversial policy have any benefits? My panel are going to be talking about that soon. I've got more of your front pages as well, including it appears that Keir Starmer has done something incredibly disrespectful to Margaret Thatcher. Stay tuned.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Is it time that we actually stop paying for royal security full stop? Is it right that taxpayers fund the security of everyone from Queen Camilla to Prince William? Because there's lots of commentary that perhaps Prince Andrew having his security removed is sort of a first step towards trying to get him out of Royal Lodge.
Well, I mean, that's what King Charles is hoping to try and do, is to sort of try and subtly strong-arm him out of Royal Lodge and into another property, which happens to be Harry and Meghan's old house, Frogmore Cottage. He's resisting, shall we say, any attempts by the King to actually go of his own accord. He says he signed a lease. He says the lease is cast iron, and that's where he's staying. So the King says, OK, you know, he's taken away his security. He believes he doesn't need to have this round-the-clock 24-hour protection. The only security, really, that the taxpayer should be paying for, the King believes, is just himself, Queen Camilla, and the Prince and Princess of Wales, because obviously they are the heirs.
But they are billionaires, aren't they? I mean, they could afford... Isn't Prince William a billionaire? He could afford his own security. Is there a legitimate question about whether or not the British taxpayer should be... The only reason I ask is because, you know, you look at what Harry and Meghan are up to. They've just been to Colombia, presumably footed the bill themselves, or maybe Colombia did.
I think Colombia invited them.
OK.
They ended up, well, Prince Harry, shall I say, ended up costing us, the taxpayer, over $1 million in Home Office legal fees with that silly case that he brought, demanding that we do pay for police protection for him. So, I mean, he's not a good example. But do they deserve it? Yes, of course they do. It's the King, and they generate, I mean, 80% of the income that they generate goes back into our coffers, goes back into the Treasury.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. More front pages for you, and there are some belters here. Let's do it. We go to the Eye. Anyone who follows Tommy Robinson on Twitter will have known this story was coming out about him at least 2 days ago. But anyway, Tommy Robinson's plan to use Sikhs, Jews and Hindus to turn people in the UK against Islam. This is the Eye's words, of course. They say that he laid out plans to attract Sikhs, Jews, Hindus and members of the black community to a UK Against Hate rally across the country, or rallies, it says here. That's according to secret details obtained by the Eye. He says he's going to unite the UK against jihad, Which is interesting, really, because the Eye makes it sound like they think that Islam and jihad are the same thing. So I don't know if they've maybe dropped a bit of a clanger there. But let's go to the Daily Mirror. Terror swoops, they're talking of jihad. Terror swoops saved thousands. CIA chief says that fanatics have planned to massacre tens of thousands of people at the Taylor Swift concerts in Vienna. Now, we're going to go over to the Times. Now, this is an interesting front page. Workers to be weighed in the office for a health MOT. Middle-aged are going to be targeted, apparently, and drive to cut heart attacks. We'll return to that, but I'll just tell you about the Daily Mail as well. Gesture of astonishingly petty vindictiveness against a political giant by the Prime Minister. Outrage as Starmer removes Margaret Thatcher's portrait. So apparently this is the £100,000 painting that's been taken down from, can I just say, the Thatcher room, all right? He said he found it unsettling. Look, let's just go with fatties being weighed in the office then. Because, Sean, you've actually bothered to read into this and it's not quite as it seems.
No, I think this is an excellent idea. So your smoking ban's a load of nonsense, but this that does health MOTs for middle-aged people at work is great. It's preventative work. This will save lives, it will save the NHS a bundle of money. It's exactly the kind of thing we should be doing. And as Matthew rightly pointed out, this is what lots of posh people do. They get a health MOT.
Yeah.
I would roll this out universally across the country. Catching health concerns early is how you survive them, how we save money.
So basically, apparently 130,000 middle-aged people will be offered free health checks in their workplaces over the next 6 months. So that includes 20 minutes it takes, involving weighing staff, measuring blood pressure, cholesterol, see if they're at risk of type 2 diabetes or heart attacks. I think it's...
Well, no, it does sound like a good idea. But what's the follow-up? Oh, yeah, no, you've got this, that and the other. Then how long have you got to wait before you even see anybody about it? This is the problem with it. It sounds wonderful, it's a great idea, but perhaps they need to start investing in the back end of it as well. Go on, then, what you got?
Shortcut the GP and go straight to the pharmacist. Actually get something done. If you can get a diagnosis in that position and they tell you what you need to take, go straight to the pharmacist. That's where the efficiency...
But this actually, I think, is a genuinely good thing, as far as I can see. I mean, look, more
I'm sitting back and letting others praise the government.
Look, more detail may emerge, but I'm struggling to see how... I would have thought that even when people talk about the spiralling cost of the NHS, when you think, well, I'd be perfectly happy to pay my tax so that everyone in the UK, basically, who's at work gets a health check.
Yeah,
for people who are working,
say yes, and agree with you.
Working people,
it'd be less you'd be paying less tax in the long run because of that.
Absolutely,
yeah.
That's the key. That's the key.
That is it. They'll pick things. People's lives will be saved because of that. They might find a little lump, or they might find something.
Correct.
You know what I mean? That you miss yourself,
which we're quite bad at in this country.
Or people don't like to go to the doctors for. You know, I've had things in the past that I didn't want to go to the doctor for. But if someone turns up at my place of work, well,
particularly men. Yeah. Men are often when it's too late to act. And if you're in a health situation, you have a qualified person speaking to you, it brings all of your health needs to the fore.
Yeah, that's the key thing. It's just going into workplaces.
But it does depend on how in-depth this is. I mean, you're talking as though it's some real serious in-depth thing. It might just be, we just weigh you, take your blood pressure and check your... and that's not really going to tell you...
Yeah, but from bloods...
Yeah. Well, if they're going to do bloods, yes, but I doubt they will. They're not going to do
the major health battles this country has, bloods are a good start to fight.
Yeah, they're actually going to do blood tests.
I really hope so.
It also gives
they're not
men
going to do blood tests on those, are they, though?
The men's a chance to talk to a health professional, which they may not have gone into their GP surgery for years.
And they might raise something else.
Just say there's a little bit going on there.
Or, you know, I'm struggling a bit mentally at the minute. Male suicide's a big thing. But, or can I just whiz this on? Sorry, because there is a big story on the front of the Daily Mail. And I've got a feeling it might come up when we do today's Greatest Bristling Union Jackass. So, let's do that then. Let's do that thing we do every night. There we go. Right, the Daily Mail have obviously gone in on this. Now, I don't know. I couldn't possibly guess about this. Nana, who's your union jackass?
Well, it's got to be Meghan Markle.
Yeah.
And these handbags and things that she's wearing because she's in the spotlight. And the handbag, by the way, was over 500 quid, so it's not as if anyone could afford this thing. So she's going to highlight things when she goes on her faux royal tours and other engagements to help to promote things that she's probably invested in. Which is, I think, it's a bit rich.
The question that I wish I'd asked you, Nana, was who's your greatest Britain?
Well, because you asked me who Union Jackass.
That's right, you're right.
Answered the correct question.
Why don't we go crazy and do it in reverse order? Why don't we all do our
because the person running the BBC is that bad.
My greatest Britain's got to be Margaret Thatcher. Of course, she's amazing. Iron Lady. How dare Sir Keir Starmer remove her picture in the Thatcher room?
Yeah.
What's he thinking?
What a petty little man, Matthew.
So I've been asking sources in Downing Street about this. I thought it was from the flat, but now it seems it's from the Thatcher room, which is a bit confusing. Yeah. I think from the flat it was legitimate to take the picture down. But he's praised Mrs Thatcher as a strong leader before, and obviously her picture will remain on the stairs where all the pictures of the former PMs are. It's just apparently he finds this particular picture unnerving.
It's called the Thatcher room.
Nobody else did.
Maybe we could put a different picture of Thatcher in it. It's that particular picture.
He's jealous. It'll never be a Keir Starmer room.
It's this picture. It's not. I don't think it's the greatest picture of Mrs T.
£100,000 as well.
It won't be. Obviously, it will just go back into the government collection, ready for the next Tory PM.
It was actually commissioned by Gordon Brown. I didn't realise that.
Remember when Gordon Brown invited Mrs T to number 10 for a cup of tea?
Oh, there you go. Well, there you are. So, yeah, apparently Starmer has taken it down because he finds it unsettling. It's another kind of power play, though, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
I feel like it's another little...
Sign
another kind of guy is.
Well, it's one of the great things when you're a minister or even an advisor, they all get to go to the government art collection and pick which pictures represent them and choose them.
I'd go absolutely wild with that. I'd be like, right, where's Attila the Hun?
Beano. I'd get pictures in from the Beano.
They're probably there, but great Dundee business.
All right,
okay.
Thompson. So let's go on. So go on, Shaw. We're on Greatest Britain here.
So my Greatest Britain is Glynis Essex from Newcastle for her message to Keir Starmer over his possible smoking ban. I think she spoke for most of the country about where she thinks he's headed and his popularity when she said he'll probably end up charging us for air. I think she really got there.
Rock on, Glynis. Here you are again.
Why are you taking all my privileges away and spoiling my life, my enjoyment? Because that's all I've got. It's my cigarettes.
Oh, yes, but I would implore you to go back. We played it at the top of the 10 o'clock
She's
hour.
the new Brenda from Bristol, who captured the nation's imagination.
And her show on GB News starts on Monday.
Management have said she's good value. She won't work. She won't work a 5-day week.
Go on, Matthew.
I'm not going to win, so I don't know why I'm bothered. So I'm just not bothered. It's Rachel Reeves.
You're not going to win. You're not going to win.
No, let's be fair.
Let him do it.
As the respected Independent Institute for Fiscal Studies vindicates her claims that the Tories did leave a massive black hole in the asylum budget.
All right, OK. So today's winner of the Greatest Britain is Glynis.
Oh!
Well done, Glynis.
And then Glynis, fantastic. OK, so I do now know your Union Jackass, Nana. Sorry, that was my fault earlier. It's Meghan Markle for grifting, is that right?
Well, that's right, grifting.
That's a strong term.
Some would say, Meghan would deny. Right, OK, Sean, who's your Union Jackass?
So my Union Jackass is the Quango Innovate UK for pouring £500,000 of taxpayers' hard-earned money into researching plant-based meats. And it's not so much this research, but we have a prison crisis, we have a knife crisis, we're talking about ridiculous smoking bans. The government has to relieve itself of spending money on these ridiculous, endless things. If we're going to research meats of this kind or plant-based meats...
There's no such thing as plant-based meat.
Let private companies do that. Let private... That is not something we should be spending taxpayers' money on.
They should also, private companies, they presumably are. There's a fortune to be made.
Exactly. And we should be focusing on the very tough social issues we have now. So it's not just about innovate, it's about what the government allows its money to be spent on.
Good stuff. Go on then.
I've got a little bit higher chance than I had with Rachel Reeves. It's my Union Jackasses, because it's the plural, it's Britain's Vice-Chancellors, as the bosses of Britain's universities are taking the you-know-what. They're accepting bumper pay rises as they make serious cuts. 66 universities are making redundancies or taking cost-cutting measures, and the bosses of 43 of those got a pay rise, some up to 26%. Take a pay packets for over 400 grand.
Don't let him win, don't let him win.
Let him win, let him win, let him win, let him win.
All right, I've gone for Meghan Markle. I do. Right, guys, look, thank you very much. Yeah, another really, really good show tonight. That's all down to you guys. And it's all down to you as well at home, if you're listening on the radio or watching us on YouTube or whatever it is you're doing. It's Headliners next. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 p.m.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Friday, it's going to be a cool but sunny start to the last day of the week and a settled day more widely across the UK. As high pressure builds in from the south and west, that will boot low pressure out of the way. So after the rather unsettled day across parts of Scotland, it will slowly turn dry as